Manisha, I'm so glad to talk with you as an animal rights activist in India. I'm really impressed with your work. Let's start with your background. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Sevagram on October 2nd, 1976.
So you are a Libra, and they like
Like,
justice and equality and are refined. Does that describe you?
I guess that would be pretty accurate.
And then you have a older sister and what was your family composition in terms of siblings and that kind of thing?
I have an elder sister, yes. She's a doctor, she's a dentist.
And what about your career path, your education path?
Actually, I haven't, I didn't really focus much on education in the sense that I dropped out of engineering, but I did complete my BCom. That's commerce.
So your bachelor's degree is in commerce.
Commerce, yes.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really pursue it, After that, I got into recruitment.
You got into what? Pardon?
Recruitment.
Ah, I know there was a period of time when you were not making very much money. You were really struggling with a college degree. How did that come about?
I would actually think it's self. I didn't really have any problems. It's just that I lost interest in my studies. I think I was distracted with a lot of things. It was during my growing up years, and I do still struggle with money. But it's not because I don't have the opportunities. It's just that running an animal shelter is not easy. I mean, I need almost a lakh or 1.5 lakhs right now, and with just 30 to 40 dogs to run the shelter. So it becomes, and with animals, I mean, constant intake of animals, it becomes very difficult to strike a balance, between what you earn and, the expenses that you incur in running a shelter.
What?
So that's what the problem is.
Yeah. What made you become a champion of stray dogs and other creatures? What motivated your devotion to this cause?
See, I mean, I come from a family that loves animals. My father and grandfather were both, they both loved animals. And I've been taking care of animals since my childhood, since I was 5 years old. And I was raised in Nigeria. That's in Africa, of course. You would know. I mean, so, I was exposed to wildlife at a very young age and I had a natural tendency for animals. So that's how it came about. I didn't really think I would start a shelter, but it's just that, I mean, circumstances, I guess, led me to it. Or I guess that would be a natural progression for anybody who loves animals.
Mm-hmm. And how many dogs and what other animals do you have that you're taking care of?
Well, I've fostered all kinds of animals, including birds and wildlife, but I'm focusing on dogs right now. Because I think it's a bit difficult to manage wildlife at this point because the expenses we incur is a lot, and also I don't have the expertise in handling wildlife. Also, there are a lot of laws. There are a lot of stringent laws in India with regards to wildlife, and I'm not really sure how to navigate that. So, I just have a natural affiliation to dogs, and they are in trouble right now in the sense that the population of dogs is out of control in India or anywhere else in the world, for that matter. So I thought I would want to focus on one thing, on a single issue, campaign first before I move on to other things.
So
I believe it's also effective when you're, when you're starting out in this field.
how many dogs do you have right now that you're caring for?
Currently, we have about 40 dogs, but we're feeding more than 100 right now.
And how do they all get along? Do they each have a separate little pen, or are they in a big yard, or how are they housed, the 40 dogs?
Currently, I've rented bungalows. I mean, this is basically a place that is under litigation, so a lot of the landlords are not using the place. So they've let me use it for free. And, because rents are very high. Anywhere else, I mean, if I look for a farm, I was originally looking for a farmhouse, but that's costing a lot of rent. So, I thought this might be a better opportunity since for the next 10 years, I don't have any trouble out here. In the sense that, because of the litigation, I don't think there's going to be much use of the place. So I'm utilizing that place, and I'm looking to renovate it right now. So we do have, I mean, I have 5 bungalows. They're functional, but I think we could, make it a little more livable. And I also have an open space that has been granted to me by the panchayat, local panchayat, which is the local municipal authority out here. In villages, I mean, villages are run by panchayats in India.
Right.
So they've given me use of an open space. It's about 5,000 square feet, and I'm utilizing that for, as a play space for the animals.
And do you have people that volunteer to help you? I mean, because it's a lot of work to clean up and feed and exercise and pet all those dogs.
It is a lot, but right now I haven't opened it up to the public yet. Because the perception that people have of an NGO, and I'm actually not an NGO right now. I'm just an individual, doing this in my capacity. I would like to start an NGO. It's just that I really don't have the resources right now to do that. But 1 month down the line, I think I should be able to do that. I do have staff. I have a staff of 3 people, and that's enough. Right now for 40 dogs, it's more than enough. I also have my cousin. He's come down to help me out a bit, and I do have volunteers coming in. It's just that I mean, I don't have a professional setup, for volunteer. I don't have a professional volunteer program as such. So I'd like to be a little more careful before I open it up to the public, so that we attract the right crowd, to the shelter.
How do you keep the dogs from fighting? Because dogs can, try to be an alpha dog and a beta dog and omega, and they fight sometimes to establish that hierarchy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I have 5 bungalows. I haven't just kept an open space that's been fenced out. Each group has their own bungalow, and they also have an open space where they can, when they can do their business or just play around. And apart from that, we have a play space. This whole area is it's a mix of farmland and forest land. Also, a residential location also. So it's a mix of all 3, but there's a lot of open space where we take them out for walks and they can play around. And they have their separate spaces. Their spaces are very clearly demarcated. But I think 40 to 50 dogs is about as much as I can take in this particular space.
Do you have vets that spay the dogs? Because obviously you don't want to bring more puppies into the world.
Yeah, of course. I mean, ABC, the animal birth control is it's very crucial, to whatever I do. So that's one of the things I'm planning to start. In fact, I've been doing it on an individual capacity, but I'm planning to start an ABC center. That's an animal birth control program, or a center for animal birth control.
Oh, do they take a pill? Is the birth control? I've never heard.
No, you've got to operate them. And there is a surgery. I mean, for females, it lasts about an hour, but for males, it's a very short surgery of about 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a vet, coming in to do this.
And does the vet volunteer, or you have to do fundraising for that?
Yeah, we do have to fundraise for that. I mean, the vet is not going to give us any services for free.
Oh.
But he has given me, he has given me discounted rates. Like if he charges 4,000 rupees for other people, he charges me about 1,250. So I think that's a pretty good discount. He does need to make a living.
Yeah, right. So mostly it's funded with your work doing transcriptions. Is that right?
Transcriptions, I'm also into translation and proofreading.
Into what, pardon?
But bulk of my work is transcription, translation and proofreading.
What kind of reading? Sorry.
Proofreading.
Oh, proofreading. Got it. Yeah. How did your English get so fluent and so good?
My English is fluent and good. I mean, my God, I didn't really think that. I would think my written skills are better than my conversational skills, especially with Americans, because I really don't have the exposure. And I live in a rural area for the last 10 years, so I lack a bit of confidence interacting with people. That is also not generally interacting with people, but I think foreigners. Because it's been a while.
No, you're perfect. Well, in Nigeria, you grew up speaking English and had English in school, correct?
Correct. Yes.
How old were you when you came back to India?
It was in 1988. I guess I was 15. I was in 7th standard. No, I'm sorry. I was 13 when I came back to India.
And what did you miss Nigeria, or what was the culture shock coming back to India where you hadn't lived for that long? What were the differences in the cultures?
I guess India is more hypocritical. If I'm not sure you know what I mean, but in the sense that Nigeria, I actually consider Nigeria my home. Gail, because those 5 years were the best years of my life, and I think they're a more open culture than India is. India is very hypocritical. Morally, we're very hypocritical, and I don't see that in Nigeria. Even if they may be a little, they may not be as organized as India, or maybe not as forward. If I can be as arrogant as to say so, but I really did think Nigeria was a great place in terms of, the openness they had in accepting people from different cultures. India is a bit more closed in that sense.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think of Disha Ravi, who was arrested for helping write a piece to support the striking farmers. I wonder what you've heard, because last I heard she was arrested. I heard she didn't have a lawyer. Then I heard she did have a lawyer. I heard she was taken from Bangalore to Delhi. Can you update me at all on her legal case?
To be honest, there's not much news about this. I think she was in custody for about 5 days, and this government pretty much knows that she's innocent, and I think they're just playing dumb, like you said. They are. It was absolutely ludicrous that they had to arrest her in this fashion, and I think they're just trying to make us. They're just trying to, make a statement as in, how do I put this? I mean, this government knows what it's doing. It's not as if they're not aware or that that she's involved in any sort of game. Because the thing is, Fridays for Future is a global organization, and even if we do have Khalistani parties, I mean, what makes them think Khalistanis cannot be environmentally, they cannot be environmentalists. Fridays for Future has people from from all across the world. So I think they should be open to that. And if they're not, then they're really dumb. Either they're dumb, they're playing dumb, or they're just trying to, like you said, they're being autocratic.
Hmm.
That's what, and this was basically to distract the whole issue of farmers, of whatever's going on with the the whole issue of farmers' protests.
Well, half of Indians are farmers, so I would imagine the government is afraid if the farmers are protesting, because there's just so many of them. They would push all the control alarm buttons.
See, I don't think it's as straightforward as that, Gail. Because see, the whole issue of the farmers' protests it doesn't make sense to me. Since I'm also into organic farming, I do know a bit about this. See, all the government is trying to do is open up trade. They believe that contract farming might be the answer. It might give a push to farmers who don't make enough income, and they're not really wrong in thinking that. There have been cases of successful contract farming, but the farmers are so used to subsidies from the government. I'm sorry, there was a cockroach. See, we have a system called the mandi system, where farmers are guaranteed minimum price for their produce. And there is also the support system they get from the government in terms of an assurance of market. And this is what the farmers are fighting against. See, farmers in Punjab and Haryana, they rely a lot on this mandi system. You could basically look at it as the government giving them a dole. And that is what the farmers fear losing. So, and this is not the case throughout India. If you see in Kerala, farming has been it is deregulated in Kerala. And there are very successful farmers in Kerala, who have traded openly. So I don't see that, farmers should also be so complacent. At the same time, I don't think contract farming is the answer. Because, corporations are not very straightforward in their dealings with farmers as well. But they do give, I think the main issue farmers have is that they feel corporations might undercut them in terms of quality. But I think that's a good thing. If you produce quality produce, that should be something you aspire to do, right? So I don't think this is the issue. The issue itself is very, it doesn't make sense on either side. It's more about farmers wanting free dole, and it's about the government not wanting to give it. It's as simple as that. So I think farmers need to, they need to up their game a bit. They would need to, qualify for certain standards, and or rather upskill, if I had to put it that way. And I think government should also be a little more sensitive to their situation, at least to small farmers with small landholdings.
Why would the government pick on a 21-year-old young woman who's done nothing to scare them. Why would they want to make her the scapegoat or the, I don't know, what, do you have any idea why they would pick on her?
See, there are two things about this government. One is they are paranoid. They are a rabid Hindu group. So they rather, I don't think they are paranoid. They're just playing on people's fears, or rather trying to fan it. That's what they're doing. I mean, they want an all Hindu majority. India. That's basically what they're looking at. So it's probably playing on people's emotions. That's one thing, and or maybe they're really dumb. Like I said, I really don't know. It does seem a little foolish because the situation is so clear. I don't think she drafted the toolkit. She may just have edited it like many others did. So I don't think she drafted it, and even if she did, I mean, they're not releasing the contents of the toolkit. If we know that, then maybe we could, have a clearer picture of the situation. Because if it did have contents where, Khalistani groups or rather I think there was some violence on 26th January. That is our Republic Day. If that happened, then of course, Disha should have been a little careful about it. But if that is not mentioned in the toolkit, then I think the government is overreacting. And they're just trying to squash, activists. I guess that's what they're trying to do, or farmers.
Why is Modi so popular? Because he's really coming across as an autocrat, like arresting Disha. What's his? Is it just his appeal to Hindu nationalism, or what's his MO that makes people vote for him again?
I'm not really sure, Gail. This is a question I've asked myself several times. So I'm not really sure. I mean, he did. I think people did think that he is responsible for the development of Gujarat, but we do know that a lot of it was just a marketing gimmick. There wasn't really anything done on the ground, as opposed to how he had marketed himself. So that is one thing. I also think that a lot of businesses in India are Gujaratis. And Modi is a Gujarati, so that could be a connection. There could be a connection in that. Now, or maybe because largely India is a very dumb population. I don't know. I really don't know. But that's this is something I've been asking myself for a very long time. I've seen the best of people vote for Modi, and make absolutely no sense when it comes to it. I know people who are very sensible who have supported Modi in whatever he is doing, and maybe because they are Hindu nationalists themselves. I guess that's the only explanation for it. So, although I don't see why Hindus feel so scared about, I mean, what are we so afraid of? I'm also a Hindu. And I don't see any threat from any faction in India as such. I have so many Muslim friends. I deal with Muslim people every day. In fact, a lot of transcriptionists are Muslims. And, I might be giving you a very narrow perspective, from my narrow lens, but it's still people, right? They're still Muslims, and I haven't faced any problem as such. And I don't see that there is any social unrest, where I live. I mean, we're living very peacefully, so I'm not sure what the problem is or where the threat lies. There has always been, this government has always been playing upon threats. Like initially it was a threat from Muslims, then there was a threat from activists, and now there is a threat from farmers. So maybe they are paranoid. And see, this particular government has a lot of uneducated, people in its, among them. So I'm not sure whether that is one of the reasons why, they, this is how the government is.
It's the same, I think, that a lot of poorly educated people supported Trump in the U.S. and rural people. Speaking of education, I read that in India, 72% of the men are literate, but only 57% of the women are literate. And I wondered what the government's doing to make sure everyone goes to school, and the kids still have to pay school fees. What do you see in terms of educational programs?
I'm not really aware of this. If the government has taken any steps, but I do know that they've set up Anganwadis. Anganwadis are rural schools, free education for women or for girls. But the implementation of it has been very poor in villages. So I don't think the government has, the government has taken measures, to improve education for women, but I don't think it is being implemented very well at the rural level.
Is part of the problem that girls in rural areas get married off young, and if you're a wife, you can't really go to school.
To be honest, Gail, that's not really the problem. If you come to Wardha, you'll see that the rural people are a lot more open than the people in the city. I mean, you do. Getting an education is not something new in India, today. And with mobile phones in everybody's homes, and online education, it's become even more easier. So I do think that the government is taking steps. It's just that people haven't opened up to the idea of educating their girls, or rather, it is not taken seriously.
Because they think it's a waste because she'll go off to another family when she gets married.
I don't think they think it's a waste because they think eventually she's going to get married and she has to take care of the family. So I think that's the attitude people have. I wouldn't really hold the government responsible for this.
What really strikes me about India is the big difference between the uneducated village person and the sophisticated, kind of westernized, educated urban person. I mean, there seems to be a bigger gap than there is, say, in China or someplace like that. Do you see that this gap as problematic?
Gap in what sense?
That there's such a difference between the poor village uneducated family and the really sophisticated urban educated, watches Hollywood movies and that speaks English, that kind of, there's a big gulf.
There is gulf, but I also think that people in the rural areas may be uneducated, but they're not. They're not dumb. I mean, in terms of environmentalism and in terms of compassion to animals and nature and all that, I think they're a little more clued in than people in the cities. Because a lot of rural India resides very close to the forests. So, they have that natural tendency for nature, for preserving nature and all that. So, I guess they don't lack the wisdom, to see through life. But I guess it's just formal education that they lack.
Got
I mean,
it.
here I find that a lot of the problems that occur for stray animals is due to the colleges that have come up over here, and due to the migration of urban dwellers in this place. Because this is an education hub where I stay, and a lot of them have problems. I find that a lot of doctors and lawyers and a lot of professionals are the people that we have to educate about nature, about wildlife, and about animals in general. But I don't see that problem with rural people because they've lived so close to to nature that they don't know how to coexist with it. So
Um,
in
it
terms of a lifestyle, I would think rural India is far greater, than the urban dweller.
Interesting. I think environmentalism has in India often been led by tribal people who live in forests,
Exactly, by tribal people, yes.
and
They're
they
very sensitized, to nature. And that is something that we urban dwellers have to learn. And I think for me, the past 10 years has been a learning experience in exactly that. I
interesting.
was in Mumbai, before this.
Yeah. Um, when I think of Mumbai, I think of like fancy skyscrapers, and then right next door a slum with people living in little cardboard shacks and stuff. So what kind of education do the kids in those slum areas get? Because they can't go to school because they have to like wait in line for water or work or whatever. What is there outreach to those urban slum kids to go to school?
Yes, there is a lot of outreach, but there are two sides to the story. You might have heard of Dharavi slum, right?
Pardon?
Dharavi, it's one of the biggest. Dharavi slum, have you heard of it in India?
Mm-mm.
It was featured in Slumdog Millionaire also.
How do you
It's one of
spell
the
it?
biggest slum areas in India. Dharavi, Dharavi.
Okay.
Huh. So there are two sides to the story. One is that people from a poor background don't have the resources, but the other is even if they have the resources, they're not willing to make the shift. to a better, for example, the government has given them, they've come up with a lot of redevelopment schemes, for slum dwellers. For one thing, these slum dwellers, they're squatting on government land. It is not owned land. But in India, it's very easy, to squat on land and acquire it after a period of time because the government does give you, land if you've squatted on that land for long enough. And in India, I think that's one of the easiest things to do. So, and the government has tried to do redevelopment schemes, but unfortunately, what has happened in many of, these slums is that people take these benefits from the government. Like, for example, if you get a flat from the government, they'll take it, they'll give it on rent, and they'll continue to live in the slums. So there is that too. It's very difficult to change their habits. Even if you do, it's not as straightforward as picking them out of the slums and taking them to a better lifestyle. It's something they should be willing to do. A lot of people in the slums have TV, they have phones, and they are earning more than 25,000, which is enough to get by in India. So there are two sides to the story. We don't really know, what's going to make that shift. But I really don't think, the answer is to pick people out from the slums. It has to be a lot of self. It's up to you. I mean, how we want to take your life.
I remember reading something about the little girl who was an actress in the movie Slumdog Millionaire. And the Western producers moved her family into some kind of fancier apartment out of the slum, but they missed the slum. I think they moved back. They didn't stay. I'm not sure if I have that right.
I don't know. I haven't heard of that, but it's possible. I mean, because this has happened a lot. And also there's the question of hygiene. For example, you might have heard of the Indian government building a lot of toilets recently. All over India. But there is no point in building these toilets. One is these toilets don't have water. Water connection is very important. And water is it's a scarce resource right now in India or anywhere in the world, for that matter. So that's one thing. The other is, even if you do give them toilets, that sense of hygiene, it has to be learned. And I don't think we have enough interventions to do that, or enough educational interventions for that. So that's another part of the problem.
When I was in New Delhi, I went to a toilet museum, and they had all different kinds of toilets that don't require water. So I'm wondering why in the world the government wouldn't have composting toilets or something that doesn't require water to flush.
No, the government does not have composting toilets because this government doesn't have the sense for that. I don't think they're that evolved, as to understand what composting toilets are. But even a regular toilet that does require water, they don't have the water connection for it. So I think a lot of it is just it's just putting up a front in front of people. Like, we've done something. And this is the case in India largely. We have a lot of infrastructure, but we don't have the systems in place to run it. That's basically the problem even in NGOs. It's the problem in businesses. And it is the problem, with the way our government functions. So that is something we need to, look into.
So that requires educated workers, right?
Educated workers is one thing I think, yes, it does. I mean, yes, it does require educated workers. Or rather, I think it requires the will to do something, and see it through.
The last time I read it, there were only about 14% women in the lower house, the Lok Sabha, but I read that there was a effort to reserve at least a third of the spaces in the lower house for women. Has that gone forward or not?
I'm not sure I know about this, but I also don't think reservation, for women is the answer to more representation in the parliament. I think women themselves should have the willingness to do it. There are enough instances of women having, not just women, educated people having the opportunity to enter into politics, but I think there is largely a detachment from politics, by the educated class. I've also been there. It's only when I came here, to a rural setup, and I saw that we don't have, you don't really think about things unless it directly affects you. So being in a rural setup, I think that I've had that exposure, which is what makes me so sensitized to various issues. And I think I would be open, to entering politics, at least some representation in the panchayat. In fact, I have. I have set up a committee in the panchayat for animal welfare also. So this is not something I would have done in the city because, we are so comfortable in our own spaces that we don't really think about these things. So I think one is reservation. You can keep reserving, spaces for women, but women have to be, they should be willing to take these opportunities. And that is largely lacking in Indian society.
Mm. I think there is reservation in the village councils called panchayats. How do you pronounce the village councils?
Panchayat, Gram Panchayat.
Yeah, and I think they do have a reservation that there should be this many third women or something. Is that right?
They do, yes. But see, Gail, once again, the problem with that is even if women do have that reservation and they do represent in the panchayat, not many of them turn up for the meetings.
Oh.
And that is a problem, just having a dud reservation, having a dud representation, it makes no sense. So we need more people, willing to get involved with the community. And I don't see that yet. So I don't think reservation is the answer, although, I mean, that's not the question you asked me. But, I'm just a little yay about it because I don't see that, making any difference in terms of women representation. If women wanted to represent, they would do it anyway. I don't know how that sounds, but I have not faced any difficulty. As such, when I went to the panchayat with various proposals, they've been very open to it. And I think there is this misconception that, people in the rural areas are more close-minded. It's not that. They're in fact looking to, they're looking for exposure. It's just that they don't have enough takers. And I think, they want better things for the villages, but they need people showing them that. Now, that inclination to want to do these things. And that's not.
When I was in India, one man told me, "Oh, those women in the village councils, they just do what their husbands tell them to say. They're really a front for their husband."
That is partly true, yes. And also elections are rife with corruption. That they're rife with corruption in the sense that at the local level, especially the panchayat level, you don't win an election unless you pay for it. So, they're basically buying their positions. It's not a free and fair election as it's made out to be.
Who does the money go to? Who do I have
money
to bribe?
Goes to the panchayat. It goes to the people heading. I mean, it basically goes into personal pockets. It's as simple as that.
So if you wanted to run to be in your village council, you'd have to pay the people who run it to choose you.
Exactly, I'd have to pay. I'd have to pay to win the elections. Also, if we do conduct free and fair elections, there is the possibility that I may get killed. That is also there.
Have you thought about running?
I have. I recently did, and in fact, a lot of people did ask me to. Because I was instrumental in getting water for a village locally, and and also I think there were a lot of that particular village had a lot of wildlife hunters, and I did some education awareness campaigns and stopped a lot of people from hunting and gave them an alternate source of income. So I've done some work that way, and I think they were very grateful, for whatever changes we brought about, or rather I've brought about, and they did ask me to run for elections. But I'm not really sure, how to go about, because locally here in Wardha, the panchayat is largely run by builders, and I'm not sure I'd like to be up against builders.
You be up against who? Who runs them?
Builders. People in the construction field, builders.
Builders, got it. Oh, so they have the money.
Sure I'd like to fight them because.
Got it. You mentioned water, and it seems like that's probably India's biggest problem is the shrinking supply of water that comes from the Himalayas and the glaciers and stuff as they're melting. What kind of steps are being taken? And the groundwater reservoirs are drying up. What can one do about that?
I'm not sure if the government is taking any steps, or at least nothing that I'm aware of. But I do know that a lot of people have come together to, for groundwater conservation, and I'm one of them. And Vidarbha is in fact one of the regions that is, that has the biggest problem with groundwater. So we are trying to create an awareness among people. We are doing rainwater harvesting. There are various rainwater harvesting techniques that we are teaching people. Also, there are these shrubs we have in Vidarbha which conserve water. And a lot of people, they cut these shrubs and use them for fencing. So we are trying to educate people about the, the usefulness of these shrubs and leaving them, and not using them as fencing. People use a lot of live fencing, these shrubs are used as live fences. and you can use it, but you don't have to cut it and use it. You could probably build something around around it, and it could act as a natural life fence. But there is no need to cut it and use it. So these are some measures that we are taking. But I think rainwater harvesting should be largely it should solve the issue largely. And this is being done by various groups. These initiatives are being done by various water conservation groups, environmentalists, and others. And I think the government also in certain pockets are doing their bit about it. But I'm not aware of any national or state level program as such.
Desalination is a possibility, but it's really expensive to desalinate seawater.
Hmm. And I think they're exploring it, right?
I don't know if India is, but I've seen desal plants in different places around the world. So some areas use them.
I don't know. I'm not aware if we have anything like that in India.
Okay. When I was in India, I've been twice, and one of the things that really made me happy was everywhere you go, you see pictures and statues of Lakshmi and Durga and Sarasvati, and there's this female imagery of divinity everywhere. But at the same time, there's like dowry and burning young brides because they don't bring in enough dowry, and women not being as educated. So it seems like an odd juxtaposition of acceptance of female symbols of divinity and women being subordinate.
It is. See, the thing is, Gail, I don't know if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, but I don't think there are many people who can give an authentic, interpretation of it. I think we need very educated scholars to be able to interpret the Bhagavad Gita, and that is not something your regular off the mill, your run of the mill priest can do. I mean, these are priests who are just making a living. So they are discourses on religion or the Bhagavad Gita or spiritual discourse is mostly mantras and silly moral lessons, if I could say that. But I don't think we really have evolved intellectually or spiritually in that sense. So I mean, I don't really have an answer to why that disparity. I mean, between the way women are treated and the way women are depicted in India. But I guess education is the answer, to it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be educated, to be able to interpret the Bhagavad Gita or our values or generally, moral values in any decent society.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is what it is.
One of the kind of difficult aspects of the Hindu tradition is caste, and if I was an Indian, I would know someone's caste by their last name, right? So is it still a problem, or have people evolved so I don't care what your caste background is? What's the current status?
I think among the more modern Indians, caste is not an issue, but also there is a debate on the very issue of caste. There are a lot of people who feel that the whole idea of caste has not been properly defined. In the sense that caste was merely a definition of various classes in the society. I don't think it was meant to discriminate. For example, I am an Iyer. It just basically meant that we are priests, and Kshatriyas may be warriors, people who protect your, for example, soldiers. Then you might have Shudras. These are people who do menial labor. So I think it basically defined your profession. I don't think it meant to discriminate on the basis of profession. So there is a lot of debate on that, and I'm not. I haven't delved into the Bhagavad Gita that deeply, to have understood it myself. But I do know that, there are. I think it's being misinterpreted by a lot of people. For example, a lot of people know about the Mahabharata and Ramayana through TV serials. And I don't think that is the best medium to learn something, for spiritual evolution. I really don't think that is. You should read the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita is open to interpretation. It is not like, I mean, it is not a guide for life. It's basically just a, how would I put it? I mean, it's the Krishna and it's basically questions on life. an answer. So it basically, it's like a guide for life, but you're not bound to follow it. Something similar to Gandhian philosophy. I mean, Gandhi explored life. His experiments for truth were basically his experiments with life. So, it just developed into a philosophy. Others developed it into a philosophy. But he doesn't dictate those, that you follow it. So that's what the Bhagavad Gita and the Hindu religion is also, similar to that.
When I was in Rishikesh, we went to a ceremony by Mother Ganga, and only Brahmin boys could perform the ceremony, not other castes and not Brahmin girls. So it seems like that kind of exclusion is still present.
That kind of exclusion, I'm not sure, because I do know Brahmin girls who have performed, funerals. So it is opening up, and I guess once again it's a matter of how each group interprets the tradition, Hindu tradition. So there is a lot of misconception, among people about what Hinduism is, and I don't think any of us have been educated. I mean, me least of all, because I'm not really religious at all. But I have started, reading the Bhagavad Gita because I felt, these are things I should know. Being a Hindu myself, and especially in the current political climate. So I do know that there are different groups that interpret it differently. And I do know that, there have been times when we've gone against the norm, because my sister also performed my dad's funeral. So that is not allowed generally in the Hindu custom, but we didn't really face any resistance when we did it.
Mm. I'm thinking of, there's like Vedanta, Yogananda, Krishnamurti. So there's a very philosophical, very developed system of thought in Vedanta tradition of India that's spread around the world. So it really operates on a sophisticated, deep philosophical level, and on the level I'm going to the temple and the priest is putting the red mark on my forehead and cutting the hair of my little baby boy in the ritual. So it seems like for the people it's very ritualistic and ceremonial, whereas for educated people it's very philosophical and deep.
Correct. Right.
So marriage practices are interesting to me. When I was in India the first time, it was really frowned upon to be divorced, and it was really hard to be a widow. You had to break your bangles and wear white, but I think that's changed. and I wondered, as a divorced woman, how people treat you.
I didn't really face much of a problem because I come from a very modern Indian family. So, I didn't face that problem. But yes, once I shifted to Wardha, I did see, a difference in treatment by neighbors and stuff like that. But nobody said it to my face. I mean, nobody really gave me a hard time for it. And to be honest, Gail, I divorced very happily. So I really don't know, I really didn't face any problem at all. I mean, my situation was very different. We faced financial problems, and we were both very mature in that sense that we felt it might be best to separate because it wasn't working out together. We were good people, we were good individuals, but not great together. So, we had more or less decided that it's not working out and that we'd separate. But I mean, I was more traditional in that sense. My husband was raised in the UK, so he's had a very forward upbringing. And, for him, I don't think it was much of a problem. For me, I struggled with it initially. But not because, I would have any trouble from society. It was more emotional. But yeah. I dealt with it pretty okay because my family was very supportive. I think they also felt it was a good decision. My husband was almost 24 years older than me. So they were anyway, not very, I wouldn't say they were not happy, but I don't think they believed it would last long.
I guess they were right.
For me, it wasn't difficult, but I do know that there are people who face difficulties. And I do know, that people around me might be talking, but they haven't really said anything to my face. And in fact, I might have faced more trouble from my relatives than people in Wardha. Like I said, in Wardha, there is no problem at all. I've seen that even if I tell somebody, somebody with a very, very rural upbringing that I'm divorced, they're okay with it. I haven't seen any, any comments or shock or anything like that.
And what
So
about
that's what I'm
widows? They
saying,
don't
Gail, it's very difficult to analyze all this and put it into words because it's very different from what I had expected.
mm,
And also, I think the way I dealt with the whole thing, I never really saw any stigma surrounding it. Although people talk about it, and I do know that my friends in the cities are facing that stigma, but I haven't faced it. So I'm not sure whether I think a part of it could be imagined. A part of I wouldn't really say imagined. I'm sure they have their share of trouble, but for me, it wasn't there.
good, good.
It was very easy.
Do widows still have to wear white, or is that an old tradition that died out?
It is there in pockets, of course, but I don't think a lot of women practice it. My mother is a widow. She hasn't practiced it, and she even wears a bindi. A bindi is actually you don't do something like that. It depicts that you're married. So my mother still wears a bindi because she can't. She's so used to it. So she hasn't faced any trouble at all. I mean, if people talk about it behind our backs, I'm not sure, but we haven't. They haven't said it to our face.
That's funny. So in 5 years from now, where would you like to see yourself and all your creatures? What would be your goal?
Well, I'm hoping, or rather, I pretty much think I would do it. I'd like to build a multi-specialty hospital for animals. I would want Wardha to be a model city, or a model town for animal welfare. And I would also want to, build sanctuaries, farm sanctuaries that double up as animal shelters. And, hopefully we would have spread, we would have created enough awareness for people to see them as sentient beings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically my vision for Wardha.
Would it be possible with your laptop to show us some of the dogs, or is that not possible?
No, it is possible. In fact, I'm going to be putting up my keto page. If I could share that with you instead, because sharing random pictures might be a bit difficult right now. I'll have to share my screen. So could I just send you across my keto page? I'll show you the entire the entire setup that I have, and also what my 5-year and 10-year plans are like.
Okay.
I basically want Wardha to be a model town. If we can do it in a small place, then we could probably replicate it in other villages also. So my plan, my ambition, or rather my mission, is to ensure that villages and small towns have facilities for animals. And in the process, if we could build systems or even businesses, that could enable community development also, I think that would be great because it works hand in hand. You can't just work for animals and in isolation and to the exclusion of human welfare. That doesn't work.
You have to
and
have
also
water.
It doesn't mean acceptance with people.
You have to have water and a good environment.
Yes.
And
Exactly, and you need to have a buy-in from the public also. Even if you have legislation in place, if people don't want, if they don't accept the work that you're doing, then you can't function. It's as simple as that. And I think for long-term change, you do need, better social outcomes or other desirable social outcomes. And for that, you need to be able to engage with people in a desirable manner.
Fascinating. Thank you.